So today I'm going to run through a list of questions we've received through our Instagram account regarding rising 10th graders. This is an important summer. This is an important transition for you because once you hit 10th grade, the level of rigor, especially academic rigor, is going to pick up significantly. And you're going to have to make some changes to your extracurriculars, some adjustments. And these are things we want to talk about. We want to be prepared. We want to plan ahead so that we are planning for success in this process. Hello, and welcome to the Admittedly podcast. My name is Thomas Caleel. I'm the former director of MBA admissions and financial aid for my alma mater, the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. In this podcast, I don't promise easy answers or quick fixes, but I will use my decades of experience to help you achieve your education goals. Now let's get started. Hello, and welcome to the Admittedly podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Caleel, and today I'm talking to rising 10th graders. Just finished your freshman year, congratulations. We're heading into summer. There's a lot to do and a lot to think about. And I want to thank all of you for following me on social media at AdmittedlyCo on Instagram and TikTok. The reason for that is because we've been running some polls, we've been collecting things from the comments, from the DMs, and you have a lot of questions, and we're here for you. We're here to answer them. So today I'm going to run through a list of questions we've received through our Instagram account regarding rising 10th graders. This is an important summer. This is an important transition for you because once you hit 10th grade, the level of rigor, especially academic rigor, is going to pick up significantly. And you're going to have to make some changes to your extracurriculars, some adjustments. And these are things we want to talk about. We want to be prepared. We want to plan ahead so that we are planning for success in this process. All right. So thank you for all of you who submitted questions. And for those of you who didn't, stay tuned. Follow me on social media at AdmittedlyCo, and we will get to your questions next. So let's start. I'm going into 10th grade and wondering how to get into business, finance, extracurriculars outside of school. So here's the thing about business. First of all, there are a lot of different flavors of business, and it's really important for you to step back and think about, okay, what interests me? Am I interested in online business, traditional business, finance, wealth management, investing, marketing? These are all absolutely valid and strong tracks in business, but what is it that interests you? Now, it's hard at your age, right? Because in some states, there'll be laws against whether you can work or not, maybe some restrictions on interning, usually rising into 10th grade. You don't have a car yet, so you're a little bit dependent on your parents. I'm always a big fan of working, if possible. It doesn't have to be fancy. Get a job at the scoop shop, get a job at McDonald's, learn how work works, learn how hard it is to make money, learn how money moves. The other thing I would challenge you if you're into business is when you walk into a business, I want you thinking like a business person. I want you thinking about, okay, if you're working there or even if you're just visiting, okay, what does staffing look like? What do I estimate staffing costs to be per hour, per year, however that works? Do they have enough people? Do they have too few people? How are they making those decisions? What do I think their rent is? What do I think their daily turnover is? What do I think their gross margins are? Do that calculation in your head. When you go out to dinner with your family or with your friends, think about that. What's the turnover in this restaurant? How much do you think that they make a day? And what that does is it gets you to a point where you start thinking like a business person. You start thinking in numbers. If you're not old enough to work, see if you can shadow, see if you can intern. If you can't do either of those, volunteer. Go find an opportunity to volunteer somewhere where you're working perhaps with financial literacy or other things. But don't just do 3 or 4 hours a week. You need to lean into this. You need to make it a serious commitment where you are moving the needle. This summer, you could take courses or you could do a program on a campus to learn more about business, finance, accounting, things like that if you want to. You don't want to be doing that really next year. Next year, you should be old enough that you can engage a little bit more, but this year, it could work. In 10th grade, is it better to do a lot of ECs or focus on 2 to 3? It's a great question, and there's a big change in your extracurricular strategy as you move from 9th grade to 10th grade. So heading into 9th grade, you want to try all the things, like this big buffet, and you want to just try this club, try that club. I mean, don't sign up for 20 clubs, but you could sign up for 6 to 8 clubs, right? And you have to balance that if you have commitments after school, if you have to work, if you take care of family, if you have sports commitments, things like that. Because some of you will have extracurricular activities that do demand a lot of time and focus. But in general, try a few things. Now, as you head into 10th grade, you want to start to winnow those down a little bit. You want to look at them and say, look, I really like hanging out with the people in this club, but my interests have changed. It's not really serving me. It doesn't really meet that often. And I know it's very tempting to just kind of leave things in the status quo because change is hard and it's hard to say no to things. But if you are investing 5, 6, 7 hours a month into clubs that no longer serve you, those are 5 to 7 hours you could spend on other things that you're truly excited about. So have the discipline to just say no. Have the discipline to step up and say, you know what, I don't want to do this. This is not serving me anymore. And so I'm going to focus on those things that actually matter to me. And then, as you move into junior year, same thing. By the end of sophomore year, by the end of 10th grade, you're going to have to cull that list probably even further so that you are executing deeply and well on 2 to 3 things. You're really making a mark. You're teed up for leadership, and you can have meaningful experiences that you can talk about in your essays. Let's see. 10th grade. Doing a semester abroad in January means no APs until 11th grade. Correct. But also maybe not. So let's talk about this for a minute. First of all, I'm a huge fan of study abroad. I think that getting outside of your comfort zone, being in a strange environment, being in a new environment, being in a place where you are challenged every minute of every day is phenomenal. I've lived and worked around the world. And to me, being outside of my place is a wonderful learning experience. It's a growth experience. So first of all, you're going to get a lot more out of that than taking an AP course. If you're really worried about your APs, take them remotely online. That's entirely possible. You can do that for credit. You can self-study for the exams. You don't even need to take the course. You self-study for the exams and take the exams. So there's a lot of ways around this. I would argue that the missing out on a couple APs is worth the experience of living abroad and studying abroad, and you can communicate that effectively in your essays to the admissions officers, and they will lean into that. Okay. International student asks, how do I build a successful college application? And that's what we're here for, right? How does this work? So in any case, whether you're an international student or a U.S. student, we want to evidence intellectual curiosity, first of all. So you are taking a range of classes, you are challenging yourself, you're taking the hardest classes you can. This doesn't mean every class has to be an AP. Okay, we understand, admissions officers understand, if you are, for example, a humanities major, Calc BC, AP Calc BC may not be your path, and that's fine. But take the hardest version of calculus if you get there that you can, right? Try and take that honors class, stretch yourself a little bit, demonstrate that rigor, get involved in activities. I know for some of my international students, the culture of extracurricular activities is not as fully inculcated into school as it is here. Don't just start a few clubs and let them bump along and think that co-founding a club that doesn't meet and doesn't do anything is going to get you anywhere. Reach out, find opportunities, create opportunities, drive things that matter to you. Again, you don't need 10 clubs, but you do need, let's say, 2 or 3 that you are invested in and you are driving and you are trying to make that difference. I know it's not easy. There is no prescriptive list. There's not an algorithm I can give you. We spend a lot of time in Early Edge Plus talking to families about this, trying to figure out what the right opportunities are. So don't think you're going to get this right out of the gate, and don't think that it's easy. You're not alone in that. When should I be doing internships? Okay. Internships are something that sometimes it depends on where you live in terms of age, in terms of whether or not you're allowed to do that. But I think internships are good at any point that you're able. But it requires a lot of hustle. I get a lot of blowback on social media, people saying, oh, it's all privilege, it's this, it's that, but it's not. I have first-gen, low-income students who secure amazing internships because they hustle. They do the work. They show up prepared. They show up informed. They know what they're talking about. They have something interesting to present. And they, get snapped up by these firms. You're going to hear no far more often than you hear yes. You might send out 100 cold emails and get 3 people that are interested in talking to you further. That's great. You only need one firm to say, yes, please come in and please intern. You need to do your research. You need to have a compelling value proposition. You should have a sharp resume. They don't expect you to be a professional, but they do expect you to actually invest in this process. So if you can start that in 9th grade summer, great. That's gonna be a little bit tricky, but if you can, great. If not, 10th grade summer is a good time to start that. What do you think I should do my sophomore year to make it to a top school? Okay, great question. So making it to top schools, what I always tell people is it's very hard to make it into a top school by trying to be the best. There's 20-something thousand high schools in the US right now, plus several thousand more internationally with students applying to top US schools. And what that means is that if you're trying to be the best in something, it's very, very hard. It's hard to be the best newspaper editor when there's probably 15 to 25,000 other newspaper editors, school newspaper editors applying. What you want to do is be different, right? Are you the school newspaper editor who raised money, launched an online version, did partnerships with local newspapers, created a whole new advertising model, did JVs with or collabs with online influencers to get the word out and help stimulate the student body? Did you write articles that were picked up by local, state, regional, national press? These are things that can help you stand out and differentiate yourself and give you something to talk about, right? This is why journalism matters to me, and this is what I've done about it. And sophomore year, you want to, again, refine your extracurriculars. You really want to lean into your academics because the difference in rigor between 9th grade and 10th grade is significant, and it goes up again in a big jump from 10th to 11th grade. So you want to be in front of your teachers. You want to be understanding how to study. You want to understand how to do things effectively. You want to start your test prep, especially the reading and writing. You have to read. I know that nobody has time. I know that everybody's busy, but you have to be reading books, especially this summer, because that will pay dividends when it comes time to taking the SAT or ACT, and those tests are becoming increasingly important. We'll talk about that a little bit later as colleges and universities try and figure out how to get around this rampant grade inflation that is currently going on. Okay. Wondering about if I need to be a student athlete to get into a good college, and that is a great question. So here's the thing. Volunteering, community service, athletics, what you do is unique to you. It has to be unique to you. Do you need to play sports to go to a good college? Absolutely not. If you're very good at a sport and you get recruited, congratulations. That is a very difficult process. It's cutthroat competitive, and you have to work very hard to balance academics and athletics. So hats off to you. The problem, I think, comes 2 other ways. First are the varsity level athletes who are playing 2 or 3 sports, and it's this massive commitment. You're playing club, you're playing school, you're investing all this time per week, 20, 30 hours a week in your athletics, and you're not going to play in college, though. You're not good enough for D1. The D3 schools that you think you can play at don't interest you academically, and so you're stuck, right? Because you're investing all your time into something that doesn't really carry into college. And the problem here is that, do admissions officers respect the hustle, respect the grind required to play sports at that level? Absolutely. But if you have nothing else, right, what that does is it puts you at a disadvantage because that's your whole personality. You're not involved outside of that. And admissions officers will look at that and they'll say, well, when he or she comes to university, they're going to have a lot of things competing for their time. And if they can't multitask, if they can't balance, if they can't allocate that time, they're just going to come here and do one thing. And that's not the kind of student we necessarily want. We want students who are going to stretch themselves and challenge themselves. So however that looks, you have to do at least one other thing. If you can get involved deeper in your club or your sport, mentor, tutor, referee, whatever that looks like, it's fairly common, but it's much better than doing nothing. The other thing is, look, if athletics are not your thing, don't do them. Right? You don't have to do athletics. You don't have to do community service, for example. If that's what you want to do, if that's who you are, lean into that. Be unapologetic. Go full send. Do it. But if, for example, you're not really an athlete and you have family obligations. You have to go home after school to take care of family members, grandparents, siblings, whatever that looks like. If you have to work, do that, right? This isn't an algorithm where there are defined parameters. This is you doing the best you can with the opportunities that you have and then communicating that in the application. Okay, here's a good one. Is the rigor of classes or GPA more important? And the answer is yes. Let me explain that. You need to take the hardest classes you can, and you need to get good grades in them. So do you need to take all APs? No. You need to take, you want to take a high percentage of APs if available. So if your school has 12 AP classes and you take 3, that's a bad look. If you can take 8, it's a much better look. It's fine to take APs concentrated around your area of interest, but it's also good to take 1 or 2 APs at least in an area that is not your primary academic interest to show the universities, hey, I can perform on a high level in a broad variety of classes. If you stretch, let's say you're a humanities major and you stretch to take AP Calc AB and you get a B+, that's not the worst look. And you can write about that in your AI essay and say, listen, I knew it was going to be a hard class and I stretched for that class. And ideally, you worked so hard in that class that you were able to ask the teacher for a recommendation and said, hey, Thomas really stretched on this class. He was working really hard. He came to office hours. He tried. He just, it's just not his strong suit, but he earned that B+, and I'm really proud of him. And so that's something that can definitely work to your advantage. So if you are, for example, an IB student, your HL classes need to reflect your area of interest for sure. If you're an A-level student, you need to take A-levels that line up with your area of interest as well. Okay. How can I better my chances of being recruited into D1 colleges for sports? I mean, this is a tough one, right? Really depends on your sport. You have to put the effort in. You have to get the sleep. You have to do the nutrition. You have to do the training. You have to commit yourself fully to that, but also understand that recruiting is fickle. And coaches may woo you and romance you and spin stories of greatness and then find an athlete that can row 10 seconds faster than you on their 2K, and they will absolutely chuck you overboard in a minute. You also need to be able to handle the academics. And so if you get a pre-read and the school comes back to the coach and is like, yeah, I mean, their SAT is way out of our band, their GPA is out of our band, and I know you want them for the team, but they just, we can't admit them academically, that's going to hurt you as well. So you have to execute on the academics. You have to execute in your sport to prepare yourself for the recruiting process. You want to get out ahead of this. You want to start contacting the coaches as soon as you can. You want to put together a thoughtful letter talking about your strengths, your academics, any test scores that you have. You want to make sure that you put together a compelling video package on YouTube, or if there's a platform that your sport uses, do that. Give them everything they need to get to know you better. If you're able to attend ID camps or preview camps, definitely do that. The final thing is that I've heard from a number of coaches that if the parents are the ones doing the contacting, they don't take the athlete seriously. So I know you're busy, but you need to drive this process. And yes, parents, they know if you're the one writing under the student's email cadence and voice changes, they know it's not the student. So students, you need to decide if this is what you want to do. You have to commit to it. You need to work with your coach, current coach, figure out who they know, what they recommend, programs that they're affiliated with. Reach out, be smart, be proactive. Okay. Do my freshman year grades determine my chance at top colleges? You can't just pop the clutch on 9th grade. You have to show up. You have to work hard. Now, there is a redemption arc here. If you start 9th grade and you scramble a little bit, you're trying to find your footing, it's a new social environment, new academic modalities, that's okay. Can you pull C's? No. But if you get a B+ in there and you recover from that and start out strong 10th grade and don't look back, you're going to be fine, right? I mean, you can address it in the AI essay if you want, but generally, admissions officers are human. They understand there's an adjustment period, and so an upward trend is always good. Let's see. Procrastination tips, please. Well, when I want to procrastinate, I will go online. I might go for a walk with the dogs. I might read a book, but that's not what you're asking. What you're asking is probably how to break procrastination habits. And I think everybody's different in this regard. You might be somebody who makes a schedule. Definitely turn your phone off, put it in another room, give it to a parent, give it to a sibling, get that distraction out of your way. I know some people like to work hard for half an hour, then give themselves a 5-minute or 10-minute break to refresh their brain. Totally fine, but have that timer. Stick to it. Have the discipline. You might want to work in a friend group and hold each other accountable. You might enlist your parents. You might enlist a sibling. Whatever modality works for you. If it's doing your homework at the dining room table so that you're not in your room and distracted, do it. If it's studying at the library, if it's taking advantage of after school, open study hours, whatever it is, find the modality that can isolate you a little bit and let you focus in and get your work done. Okay, let's see. Daughter, no sports, sings, loves community service, enough extracurricular. It's like an admissions haiku. I love it. So, again, you don't have to do sports. That's fine. If singing is her thing, if she loves community service, commit to that. That's great. I'm assuming she's challenging herself and joining, advanced singing groups at school. Can she engage with singing opportunities outside of school? Sometimes it's at a church. Sometimes it's in a community group. Sometimes it's at, forming your own group, recording, things like that. With community service, if you can find an intersectionality there between singing and community service, great. If community service in a different way, also great. If she likes to work at the food pantry, for example, or whatever it is, lean into that. We don't want something you're doing 2 to 3 hours a week, right? Because in the activities list, they ask you 2 very important questions: hours per week and weeks per year. They're looking for depth and consistency of engagement, and that's what matters here. So yes, it can be plenty of extracurricular activities depending on how full and rich an involvement she has. So let's see. I'm going into 10th and wondering about not having a full backbone of science. So generally, it's important to have a well-rounded curriculum. If you're in IB or A levels, it's a much more narrowly targeted curriculum, obviously, and you're locked into it for 2 years. For AP students, so you're refreshing that curriculum sometimes every semester, definitely every year, and having, being able to take the science classes. First of all, you have to go look at the schools, the colleges you're going to apply to, and see what their requirements are, because some of them will require a bit of a full spectrum, at least physics, biology, and chemistry. So go in and understand what that looks like. You don't want to get to senior year and realize, oh, I can't apply here because I'm missing a science class. You don't have to take them at the highest level if science is not your thing, but you do have to challenge yourself, push yourself, try to take the highest level you can, invest the time, invest the effort, show that you are intellectually curious and you can handle rigor outside of your comfort zone. Okay. Are activities like speech and debate or Model UN worth the time commitment? My favorite answer, as all of you who follow me know, it depends. So don't just do them to do them. Do them because they fit into your broader strategy and what it is you're trying to get across. So if you are interested, for example, in pre-law or international relations, you think you're going to study political science, these can be great. Right? These can be absolutely great for you because they do tie to your major. They do tie to things within those majors. And if you want to do that, then you absolutely should. Now, here's a problem with things like speech and debate, Model UN. 20-something thousand plus schools, high schools in the US alone. And so these things take up a bit of time, and you can do them for your own edification. So if you say, I really want to get better at speaking, public speaking and debate, so I took speech and debate, and I want to be a scientist, but this was really important to me because I think being able to convey my ideas is very important, then go ahead, absolutely do that. But trying to be the best at speech and debate or the best at Model UN is very tricky because it's like Olympiads or other competitions. Unless you are at the very highest level, you're missing an opportunity. I know how harsh this sounds, right? But if you're investing a lot of time in something and you can't be great at it, you are going to get beat out by the other students who are great at it. So I want you to think carefully about how and where you're allocating time. Does this advance your cause? Do you have a chance to be great at it? And if you want to do one of these things as something where it's like, this is for me, go ahead. I have definitely spoken before about the importance of having extracurriculars that are just for you and not necessarily strategic, but don't have too many of those, because now all of a sudden you come across as unfocused and not really making any forward progress in learning who you are and where you want to be. Okay. What scholarships to apply to? So, here's the thing. Scholarships are tricky because you have to look at the different schools. Some schools have only need-based. Some schools have need and merit-based. And you have to pull that apart a little bit. Some of this is won in the trenches of the application process. So if you come across as a really compelling applicant, you've done interesting things, you've challenged yourself, you write well in your essays, you present a coherent and compelling strategy and thesis, they're going to throw money at you because they want you to matriculate, right? When you're crafting a class, you're admitting students and you want them to come if you admit them. So they will throw money at you. The other thing is to set up a very compelling portfolio of schools. If you need financial aid, be careful about early decision because you're locked into a financial aid package. So maybe look at early action only and then take that into regular decision. Get a portfolio of admissions decisions with financial aid offers and have honest conversations. Don't play games with schools. Call up and say, look, I really want to go to your school. This is the number I need to make it work. I've got that offer from these schools, but if you match it or at least come close to it, I will be coming to your school. And they might not be able to match it, but it is a conversation they're willing to have. Recently worked with a family and helped them get about $30,000 off the initial, absolutely firm, we're not budging financial aid offer that they got. So these things are a process and it can be negotiated out. And so it's something that you do want to lean into. And then obviously there are a lot of private scholarships that you can apply to as you go through the process. 10th grade, what summer program in 2026 to do in aerospace engineering and physics? So some of these, like neuroscience and aerospace engineering, these are hard, right? These are not opportunities that just are everywhere, right? And so I think you have some opportunities. Number one is you can take advanced classes. You can go find a job if you can, or an internship at an airport, at an aerospace engineering firm, at a lab. You can try and shadow engineers. You can, these are things that will help you can do. If you're a U.S. citizen, NASA has some very interesting internships, for example. But if you're not able to do that, just go get a regular job, right? And then maybe find a way to take an online course in aerospace engineering, right? And you can talk about that in the application and say, look, there were no opportunities. I looked, nobody will hire me because of my age. It wasn't a possibility. And so what I did was I worked. I wanted to save up money for school. And this is what I learned from that experience. At the same time, I took this class, online class, or class at my local university, and learned something about the actual, aerospace engineering process. And that's how I advanced myself. Okay. How to find extracurriculars that matter as a 10th grader. Here's the thing. It's what matters to you. Because when you think about being in 10th grade, there's a very limited menu of extracurricular activities that you can actually do. And so you need to find those couple that speak to you and lean in and figure out, okay, how do I do this in a way that speaks to who I am? What matters to me? How can I advance this cause? Am I advocating for causes that I care about? Am I helping people in a community that matters to me? Am I pursuing something or taking advantage or creating an opportunity to do research or to work or whatever that looks like? So you're not being judged on what you're doing per se. You're being judged on how you do it and how deeply and well that you do it. So finding extracurriculars that matter, look around you, talk to people, send out emails, try and get people on the phone, talk to people. Opportunities will present themselves if you hustle, if you're prepared. And listen, I get it. I'm going to get pushback on this, but This is for rich people. This is for people whose mommy and daddy can set them up. Does that help? Absolutely. But do I also have students with no connections, no history, cold emailing their way into research with Ivy League professors? Absolutely. Write a compelling introduction, lay out your case, make it brief, make it concise, talk about why this matters to you and why you would be a good addition to their research because you've read their research, you've done your diligence. You only need one person to say yes. All right, let's see. Is me not doing much freshman year going to matter? Yes, it's going to hurt you. If you just kind of showed up freshman year and pulled B's and weren't really involved, it's going to hurt you. But we all grow and mature at a different rate. And so if you can, at the end of freshman year, realize, hey, this is not the way, and engage over the summer, really, really pick it up and do things. Prepare yourself for sophomore year. Get your study habits organized. Get yourself on track. Come back in 10th grade. Hit those academics hard. Be involved in your extracurricular activities. Then talk about that in your application. Absolutely. Okay, we all are humans. We all go through periods of growth. We all go through periods of stagnation. And so I think laying that out in a compelling way in an application can be really, really beneficial. Okay. I have a very unique extracurricular and a very clear theme, but no impact. All right. Impact is something that I think is very interesting because how do we define impact? It's like defining community. You need to come in and say, this is what I do, and this is why I do it. So let's take, they didn't give an example, but let me take an example that I got in the comments the other day, right? Somebody who is very into playing, like trading cards. I don't know if they're Pokemon cards, whatever it is, but it's something they've been doing since they were 8 years old. They're deeply knowledgeable on it. And they're like, this is something I trade these cards, I buy these cards, I sell these cards. It's really meaningful to me. And you could argue, well, this really doesn't have an impact because it's just this person doing things. Okay, well, there are definitely communities around you that buy, sell, trade, and discuss this. Online communities, forums. Can you go be a moderator on one of those? Can you start your own channel, but lean into it, right? Build a following, learn online marketing techniques, be the person who's organizing, disseminating information, writing a newsletter, right? Just starting a YouTube channel or an Instagram account or a TikTok account is not enough. You have to go out, you need to make the effort, you need to learn how the algorithm works, and you need to drive action here. That will set you apart, and that's something that you can do to create impact. What's the most recommended activity to focus on in 10th grade? There is not one. You need to get super strong in your academics. You need to refine your extracurricular list and find ways that you're on a path to leadership or impact. You need to be focused on growth, right, in your 10th grade year. So there is no one thing. This is a complex process, and you're going to have to keep a lot of balls in the air. You're going to be juggling all the time. It's going to be overwhelming. You're not always going to do well, and that's okay. Learn from that, because as you head into junior year, 11th grade, where things get exponentially even harder, you're going to need these skills and this discipline. Best SAT tutors. So the best SAT and ACT tutors, and by the way, there's no preference. Colleges have no preference, SAT or ACT. So the best tutors are the ones who are going to teach you not just the material, but the strategy of the test. And I cannot emphasize how important this is, right? This is not an intelligence test. SAT, ACT are about learning how to solve the test. You need to identify what the problem types are, how to recognize them quickly, and how to solve them in that modality. So you want to start with these tutors, first of all, doing a diagnostic, take an ACT, take an SAT, practice test, figure out which one fits you better, then start to break that down. You need a plan when you're taking the test. You need to work backwards from there. You need to take regular practice exams, break down which problem types are giving you trouble, and you need to focus in on them and practice. Don't just go to an SAT or ACT tutor who's giving you practice questions and being like, okay, let's solve this. Because that is focusing just like it's looking at the test through a straw. You want to take a macro version and look at the entirety of the test and the strategy around that, and then laser in on those things that you need to get better at. You need to read constantly. In terms of a recommendation, we've been sending the Early Edge Plus students, or recommending the Early Edge Plus students, to Advantage Testing. That's advantagetesting.com. If you mention that you came from Admittedly, they have a special program for us. They would love to have you join. They have special things that they do for our students. So if you go to advantagetesting.com and you mention that you're coming from Admittedly, they will take very, very good care of you. Okay. Future sophomore here. How do I stand out in a small school where I'm not taking the highest level classes? Okay, so this is a tough one, and I have students in this category. So first of all, you don't have to take all of the highest level classes, but I would like to see you in the area you have an academic interest in, taking the hardest classes that you can. Whether that means doing a little bit of extra work, getting tutoring, Khan Academy, office hours, whatever it is, you have to challenge yourself in at least one academic direction to show that you're intellectually curious and you're willing to kind of stretch and push yourself. But in a small school too, where you have limited extracurricular opportunities, you're going to have to look for involvement outside of school. I know I talk to a lot of students, sometimes overseas, sometimes in the US, and they're like, there just isn't, our school just doesn't have the clubs, it doesn't have the engagement. Okay, well, there's a world outside of school, and you need to lean into that. Grab some friends and go volunteer together. Grab some friends, go work together. Do something on your own. Start something. Whatever it is, lean into it and commit to it. You can't use a small school as an excuse to not do the things that you need to do. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Sophomore, targeting the amount of APs and GPA to get into an Ivy. You need to do the best you can, and you need to put it in context, because admissions officers are looking at you in the context of your opportunities. They're not judging everybody the same. They're saying, okay, given you the opportunities you have, given the advantages or disadvantages you have, how have you taken advantage of those? How have you made the most of this opportunity? And how do we make this the best possible package for us? So put those in context. Obviously you want to do your best, but a 3.4 GPA in one sense might be awful, and in another sense might be great, right? Depending on your background, depending on your privilege, depending on the type of school that you're at. So frame everything, give the context. Don't assume the admissions officers are going to figure it out on their own. It's your job to communicate that clearly. Okay. In 10th grade, what do you think of dual enrollment classes? I think they're great. I think they're great because many times you can get credit for them, where APs nowadays, most colleges are not giving credit for that. They're allowing you to place out of classes with a 5 on an AP exam, but they're not giving you credit for it. And I think that dual enrollment classes allow you to expand the menu of classes available that aren't available at high school, and they show that you can operate effectively in a high-level college environment academically and excel. Okay. That is, those are a lot of questions. And I want to say thank you very much to our followers, to our community for posing them. We always welcome your involvement on Instagram, TikTok, at AdmittedlyCo, on YouTube, on the podcast. We want to hear from you. What's on your mind as you leave 9th grade, head into the summer, and head into 10th grade? Welcome your questions, welcome your engagement. I'm in the DMs, I'm in the comments all the time, answering them. We're looking forward. We'll be running more polls so that we can have more podcasts like this. Thank you, everybody, for following. Remember that we do a monthly free webinar. I encourage you to look for that. Follow me so you don't miss it. Thank you for following the podcast. Thank you for your engagement. What's on your mind? Tell us in the comments at AdmittedlyCo on our socials. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for joining us today. Please take a moment to subscribe to the Admittedly podcast and download this episode. I welcome you to share your thoughts and questions with me. You can find us on social media at Admittedly Podcast. I look forward to continuing our journey together.